audio.
I was muted. Look at me.
Oh, there we go. Okay, good. There we go. I was like, oh no.
Welcome, welcome. I'm so happy you were able to join me today.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
Yes. We're going to jump right into it because I want to dig in. I can't wait to talk to you.
Okay, cool.
Thank you for joining me. I have a special guest with me. She is a young lady on a mission to show millennials that finances can be easy and fun. Can't wait to hear this. After paying off over $36,000 of debt in less than 18 months and seeing how it transformed her life, she knew she had to help others achieve the same freedom. Please help me welcome millennial money expert and CEO of Deeper Than Money, Miss Elise. Chloe, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to talk all things money. I love it.
Yes. You said in your mission, you're on a mission to help people see that finances can be easy. That alone is a whole conversation. But then you said fun. So I want to make sure we float those as balloons because we want to come back to those. But you deal with money and you help millennials, not just millennials, but everyone just realize how money plays a factor in our everyday life. And I want to talk about this debt that you were in, $36,000. So many of us are dealing with debt on so many levels, especially in this climate. How did you get to that point? Because I think you were fairly young, if I remember correctly, when you were in that. How did you get to that point?
Yeah, so I was, most of that debt was debt for me to go to college. So I think about like 26,000 of it was student loans. And then I had about $10,000 on a car loan. And I remember, so I went into this debt at like 17, 18 years old, but I don't even remember, or I remember not knowing how much it was. Like I signed the papers and the student loan people are like, yeah, let me read it to you so you understand. I'm like, nope, don't need to know, don't care. I don't want anything to do with it. I grew up learning you don't talk about money. Money is private. You don't ask about it. It's just like something you like do not talk about. So my response to money was complete avoidance. And so then got into that debt, really didn't care about finances. I was your very typical broke college student. I was donating plasma to pay my groceries and was working really hard. I had a lot of part-time jobs, but I always was making enough to like pay my bills. And then anything extra just felt like it wasn't enough. Like I would spend it or it would, I'd lose cash because I would just like leave it on my table or whatever, like random things. And so I was really bad with money, pretty much. And then I kind of got to this point where I was like, I'm working so hard and I'm missing out on my college experience to work, but I have nothing to show for it. Like, what was the point? I might as well, not be working so hard so I can at least attend all the fun things and still be broke, right? So that was kind of a turning point for me when I started trying to figure out finances. And all of the resources that I was reading were so boring. They made finance so boring, so confusing, all these, confusing phrases and words and all this stuff. And it was so overwhelming where I was like, there has to be a better way. So that's kind of when I went on my own experience, my own journey of learning the best way to get ahead with money, and ended up paying off the $36,000 of debt in 18 months. I became debt free at 22. And that just changed everything for me. And at that point, I was like, if I can go from that broke girl donating plasma to pay groceries, I can show other people and really make this my mission.
Absolutely. $36,000 in 18 months is phenomenal. There are many who can't even pay $5,000 on a credit card in a lifetime, So we have to talk about your step. What was your first step when you said, I'm going to tackle this debt? What was the first step that you took in order to make that happen?
For sure. I think the first step was understanding what it took to maintain my lifestyle. I had no idea how much I was spending per month on bills, on groceries, on anything. I had no clue. If you would have said, how much do you spend on food? I would have said, maybe $100, but in reality, I was spending like $300. I had no idea. And so a lot of times we see money coming in and money going out, but we don't know what that is. And so we can't really plan with it. We can't really make a plan or take those next steps. And so that was probably my first step. The first thing I did though, before paying off debt, which is just so important, was having an emergency fund. And I recommend clients having between 1 month to 3 months of expenses in an emergency fund. So you figure out, step one, how much am I spending per month? Take that times, 1 or 2 or 3, depending on your risk. If you're like living at home with mom and dad and have lower bills, it can be 1 month. If you live by yourself, have, a pet or have people counting on you, let's make it 3 months. And I save that first and I keep it in a high yield savings, little tip, keep it in a high yield savings account. And so I save that money. And that was huge for me because a lot of times before then, when I started trying to pay off debt, I'd pay off a little bit of debt and then I'd be like, oh my gosh, no, this thing came up and it threw me off. And now I don't know what I'm going to do. And now I'm like, I'm going to go back into debt or whatever. And so having that emergency fund really kept me from going back in the red and going back negative. And also just mentally made me feel so much more confident in being able to pay off debt.
I know when many talk about tackling debt, this picture comes to mind of having to work 2 or 3 jobs and not having any luxuries, whether it be just the new pair of sneakers or a nice home or car. Was that your life? Were you like breaking yourself down, trying to work all these jobs and collect all this money? Was that your story?
So when I first started learning about finances, the financial gurus that I looked up to, most of their teachings were based on restriction, and they were based on what you were talking about, sacrifice, never spend a dime. You can't go on a trip. You can't go to a restaurant. You can't do this if you want to get out of debt. So when I first started in my journey, I was like sacrificing everything. I was like, I can't go out to eat. I would say no to go to a birthday dinner with a friend. I would say no to getting coffee with, somebody else. And it was so impactful on my mental health. I felt so guilty and I felt so much shame every time I bought something. I'd feel guilty after I paid my utility bill because I'm like, I should have turned more lights off and I should have just never turned my AC up and I could have spent less. And so it became this really, really unhealthy mindset for me, to where I finally was just like, this isn't working for me, even though maybe there's something wrong with me because all these financial gurus are telling me I need to do that this way, but I can't do it this way anymore. So from there, I was like, I have to be able to live my life. I do not want to look back and regret giving up these memories in my 20s because I was so committed to this. So that was a very pivotal point for me when I started enjoying the journey. I started enjoying paying off debt because I was also allowed to go out to dinner with my friends. I was allowed to buy the shirt or whatever it was. And so that's a big thing that I teach now is you don't have to give up things. You have to sacrifice the things that you value in order to become debt-free faster. And I tell my clients this a lot where, let's say a client who she's like, I really want to go on this vacation, but I feel like I shouldn't because of, I need to pay off debt. I'm like, okay, is it worth it to you to have, wait 7 days to become debt-free in order to have this vacation? And she's like, well, yeah. And it's so often it's this, we focus so much on the money. We focus so much on being debt-free that we forget why we want to be debt-free. Why do we want to be debt-free? To have freedom, right? To have more freedom, to make more decisions. And so it's okay to give yourself that freedom now to take the vacation to do that, because we don't need to focus so much on becoming debt-free. We need to focus on, is our money going into places that we value?
You mentioned financial gurus and their teachings, and many of them teach about good debt versus bad debt. And good debt may be a home because it appreciates, if you will, and maybe bad debt is that piece of jewelry that you really don't need. Do you buy into that philosophy? Or if not, what is your views on that?
Totally. I think debt is a past investment. That's what debt is, right? We have this idea that there's some debt that is okay to have, and then there's some debt you should feel really bad about. You should feel stupid. You should feel dumb. How dare you go into that? You're irresponsible. I don't believe in that, right? Even, a lot of times that comes with like credit card debt. I'll hear, my clients will be so embarrassed to even admit they have credit card debt, or talk to their partner about it, or talk to whoever. And if they look at it as a past investment, right? I have this credit card debt because I made the past investment of some furniture or some new clothes or whatever, and they look at it like that, they can release that guilt and shame. And when you have so much guilt and shame, it slows you down, and it makes finances suck. It makes finances suck to talk about. It makes every time you sit down and look at your bank account, it makes it just such a negative experience. Whereas if you can look at that and say, okay, that was a past investment. Was it a great investment? Maybe it wasn't the best investment, but again, it was a past investment. I've learned from it. I'm going to make, maybe different decisions if I have different values right now or whatever. And so do I think that for credit card debt, maybe, sure, if I look at my priorities, I might want to pay that off way faster and focus on that rather than focusing on the house or the mortgage like you were talking about. That's okay, right? Of course, you can look at that and say, for the bad debt people talk about, that's debt I want to pay off first. But we don't have to label it with these negative emotions, because so often we're so tied to finances, and we start to feel unworthy of getting out of debt, or we start to feel unworthy of getting this thing or doing that or whatever. And the truth is, you woke up today worthy. Nothing you can do can make you less worthy, and nothing you can do can make you more worthy. Like, you're just worthy, period. And so often when we get in those conversations of like, oh, well, my uncle told me I have bad debt, therefore I'm bad. We have to be able to detach from that and say, there's debt that I want to take care of more, but that doesn't necessarily mean, it's bad or I'm bad.
If I'm tracking properly, it sounds like the fun part of what you are about when it comes to finances is taking the restrictions off and giving yourself more freedom, maybe a little bit more freedom than maybe our parents and grandparents did, because they were a little more rigid with their finances. Giving yourself more freedom to learn your options and explore the opportunities that are available to you. So that's a great place to start. I have to ask, you, over more than 50% of your $36,000 of debt was student loans. Now being a few years out of school, how do you feel about student loan debt? Do you think it was worth it, or would you have done something different? What are your thoughts?
Totally. So for me, looking back, I know, so for me, in order to go to the college I wanted to at that time in my life, I had to have taken out debt. I wouldn't have been able to go to that school at that time if I wouldn't have. And I love college. I met my best friends there. I met my fiance there. It made me who I am today. And so absolutely, I will pay that, $26,000 investment into becoming who I've been today. I would not change absolutely anything. And, there's this, and I think a lot of it also comes down to privilege. Like when I hear conversations about like, well, if you have to take out loans and don't go to college, it's just like, to me, that comes from such a place of privilege of like, okay, so since my parents happen to be of a certain social, status, then I'm allowed to go. But if your parents weren't, then you're not allowed to go. You have to weigh it. It's unfair. And so I think student loans, just like any other debt, it's a tool. It's a tool that I chose to use so I can get into that situation. But the biggest thing is education. I think that there's so many students who, like me, I didn't understand debt. When I first found out I had $26,000 of debt, I'm like, is that fake money? Like, what does that even mean? I couldn't even fathom. I was making like $6.50 an hour working in my mailroom. I'm like, 26,000? Are you kidding me? And so it felt fake. It felt fake to me. And so while I don't think there needs to be this narrative of like, you should never take out student loans, or like you should, or whatever, I think more so what we need to do is educate the 17-year-old who's signing the document of like, okay, I'm going to go do this, to saying, hey, if you want to go to this school, here's what that you'll be in. Here's what that looks like. Here's what the payment plan looks like. Here's what your potential career will be like. And so this is how much it'll take to pay it off. And so you understand your opportunity cost of different schools. I got lucky because the college I ended up going to, you know, like I said, was the best experience. I'm so happy, but some people don't have that. They think, well, I have to go to college. They go to college. They're miserable at college. They realize that they want to do something in like trade. So then they drop out of college, have student loan debt, then go to trade school and do what they actually want. Whereas if we had more education in that process, instead of just farming these kids out and being like, you have to go to college, if we change that narrative and the pressure of college about taking on debt to go to college, I think more kids would be able to truly make a decision instead of feeling like they have to do something.
So true. So true. What's beautiful about your story is not only did you learn about debt very early, but you also learned about entrepreneurship and making your own way financially. You paid off your $36,000 worth of debt in 18 months and then went on to become a six-figure earner by the age of 23. Tell us about that journey and how that you made that happen.
Yeah, so I graduated college and started my corporate job within like 6 days of graduation. And it was a corporate job that I really wanted to do, and I was really excited about it. Pro tip, negotiate your starting salary. That was a big thing for me that helped me, especially my journey of paying off that debt, was being able to negotiate my starting salary and landing a higher salary, which then I could put, you know, towards debt. So I went to corporate, and I really enjoyed corporate. I learned so much from it. I had a great boss, but I knew, I remember it was close. I graduated in May, and now it's like closer to Thanksgiving. And I realized that I didn't have any PTO. So I could either take off one day for Thanksgiving, or I could take off one day for Christmas. And so I had to miss one of them. And I went to the parking lot. I called my mom and I started crying. I was like, Mom, so I'm just supposed to like do this every day until I die? There's like no breaks? Like this is what I'm supposed to do until I'm 65? Like, what is this? And she's like, I know, that's just kind of being an adult. And I'm like, until like, I remember like walking back in and being like, does nobody else feel this way? Am I crazy? Like, is there something wrong with me? Like, am I just the stereotypical millennial who has a short attention span and like cannot do the same job for 65 years? And so, I mean, I'd always liked entrepreneurship, but I had always had this narrative of like, someday when I'm 35, I could be a full-time entrepreneur. And so I started at that time. So I'd paid off my debt. It changed my life. People were asking me, how did you do that? How did you do that? And I love talking about it. So the job stuff and me realizing, oh my gosh, I don't want to be in a corporate job forever. That was happening. I'd paid off my debt. That was happening. I liked entrepreneurship. And so all three of those things collided. I want to become a money coach. And so I started right away. Like I paid off debt a year after graduation, because I had started paying off debt 6 months before I graduated. So it was like 18 months, year after graduation. And right when I graduated, I started getting tons of certifications. I was like, I want to do this. I want to do this the right way. And so then it took me a while. So then that fall, I started Deeper Than Money. And it was just, I mean, it's been the biggest dream of my life to wake up every day and love what I'm doing. And so started in August of 2018. And I was like, you know what? I am going to quit June of 2019. And I had no reason of saying this. I just want to point that out. I had no substance of saying this. I was making a couple $100 in my business a month. I had it was just a dream of mine. And I wrote it down. I wrote June 8th, 2019. It was my password to log into my computer at work, June 8th, 2019. And I just kept telling myself like, okay, what would I need to be able to do? How much would I need to be making my business? How many clients would I need to be able to serve? How many, whatever. And mapped it all out. And I was like, okay, I'm going to figure out how to do this. And I hired mentors and took courses and took classes and like, how can I grow my business in a way that is authentic, in a way that supports my clients, in a way that, just really makes sense. And so I went all into entrepreneurship, and I put in my 2 weeks before June 8th, 2019. So my last day was June 8th, 2019, which is really just incredible. And then since then, the company's grown. I was able to retire my mom from her full-time job to come work for me, which was amazing. Last summer, I retired my fiance from his full-time job to come work for me. And it's just so fun to be growing this business that I'm so passionate about and so excited about, to see client after client just crushing it. And really just this movement of more millennials. And I mean, we work more so with women. We work with anybody, but we just our clientele tends to be more like higher percentage of women, just talking about money and feeling confident about money and having these conversations feel really good and easy is just, I mean, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable to wake up and be like, I cannot, like, this is the life I dreamed of, and now it's the reality. Like, nothing beats that.
Negotiating your salary. And I want to really put a pin there, because I think so many young people don't even know how to ask for what, they don't even know how to determine what they're worth, let alone ask for it. Talk about that process for you, and what points would you give to our young people as far as they're new to the job force, going into corporate or whatever? How should they approach that process?
For sure. So the biggest thing is that you want to go into the application with the mentality of, I'm going to negotiate my starting salary. Most people say, oh, well, I'm sure that conversation comes after they offer me the job. But really, you're prepping from day one, from the day you apply. And so this is when sometimes on applications, I'll say, what is your expected salary? Going into that, writing that and saying, okay, I'm not going to underperform. I'm not going to say this lower salary so I get a look. I'm going to go into it putting the salary that I want. And a lot of that is research, right? A lot of that is going online. A free one that I do like is called Glassdoor. You can create an account. It's free. There are better ones, but they're paid. And so for me as a college kid, I'm like, I'm using the free one and that's it. So tell me the free resource. But Glassdoor, you can look up and say, okay, here's the position I'm looking for. What is the national average? Okay, now I live in the Midwest. So what's the average here? I live here, whatever. And understanding, okay, that is my range. And then giving them the range with the lower end of the range being the minimum you'd be willing to accept, and then having that range so you can have that conversation. Other things would be prepping your interview questions into asking them questions about their business. You're interviewing them, right? I think a lot of people are like, please give me the job, like, and then they're like, yeah, do you have any questions? And they're like, nope, just please give me the job. And it's like, no, you should be interviewing them. You're signing up to work for them. You want to make sure it's a good work culture. You want to understand why this position is open. Is it because the last person was promoted, or is it because the last person quit and this job is hard to fill, right? Understanding those things and having them sell their company to you of why you should work there. One of my favorite things to do at the end of job interviews is to ask, for your last question, what hesitations, if any, do you have with me moving forward in this process? The reason I like to ask this is because, one, it allows them to express any hesitations. For me, I asked that at the end of my interviews, and somebody said, well, I interviewed for this job in like early April, and I wasn't graduating until end of May. And she said, well, we want someone to start ASAP, and you're graduating end of May. And I had no idea that they wanted somebody that was starting earlier. And so that allowed me to respond to that, tell them why they should wait, or like, that I'd be willing to do things a little bit earlier, whatever. And, provide that kind of like rebuttal of like, okay, I hear you, but here's my response. And also if they say, we don't have any hesitations, that can really bode well for you down the road when they're taking notes on who was their best candidate. And they think, well, I had no hesitations about her, because they've already verbalized it. So after that, getting ready to, as you're going into the conversations of they're potentially hiring you, they're offering you the job, a lot of times it'll be a phone call. They'll call you and say, we're so excited, we're offering you the job. And a lot of people get nervous. They're like, okay, I'll accept it. And they accept right on the phone. And what I recommend doing is expressing gratitude, saying, thank you so much. I'd love to, take a look at that final offer and what that looks like. And I would love to ask, is this offer negotiable? It's a great way to still be grateful, still have that conversation, but also ask, is it negotiable? They can say no, but 90% of the time they'll say, yes, it is. And so that gives you the permission slip to send that email back, to where you're not like, oh my gosh, what if they're mad that I send this? But to where then you can really craft up your counter offer of saying, thank you so much for this offer. Here's what I am requesting instead. Here's why. Make it about them. Make it about the value that you're bringing, not about like, I'm worried about paying my bills. Make it about them. You know, this will be a benefit to you, and here's why, and here's what I'm going to bring to the table. Then send it back and be able to have those conversations with confidence, knowing that you're bringing stuff to the table too. And the craziest statistic is that if you do not negotiate your starting salary of your first job, it's estimated that you will lose out on $1.6 million over your career. 1.6 million, because if you look at how much a lot of times your next job, your income can be based on that first job, especially if you're moving up in the company. It's a lot harder to get raises than it is to start at a higher, salary jump and then get raises. And then if you were to take that money and then invest that money, and that money were to grow, it's wild to see kind of the difference and just how important it is to have those conversations.
So necessary. So necessary. You were successfully able to balance your corporate job and entrepreneurship, and ultimately worked yourself out of a job.
Yeah.
So many millennials are gun-ho about entrepreneurship, which is so beautiful, is what I love about our generation. But talk about the balancing act of that, financially speaking. What kind of things that you have to do? We understand what you had to do to get out of debt, but then what does that look like financially now when you're working this job, you got the money, but now you're trying to build something? How did you allocate those finances throughout that process?
For sure. Great question. So I knew that when I was starting this business, I wanted to scale. I was not looking for some extra pocket money for groceries. I was looking to scale and reinvest it back in the company. And so, for my up until I quit my corporate job, I wasn't taking that money and putting it into my pocket. I was reinvesting it. I would make money from clients. I'd set aside money for taxes, and then I would buy new systems that would allow my clients to, have better communication from me or whatever. And then I would make more money from clients, and I would reinvest it into hiring an assistant. And then I'd make more money, and I would reinvest it into all of these things that were able to better my business, grow my, grow the foundation, and start growing the team that can support where I wanted to go. And so that allowed me to grow really fast, to where when I was able to quit my corporate job, then I was giving myself a paycheck every single month. And I think that's a big misunderstanding that a lot of people have, or a big misconception, is people will say, oh, you left your steady corporate job for entrepreneurship. It's a roller coaster. And it doesn't have to be, right? It doesn't have to be a roller coaster. What I recommend doing is even if you're not, it depends on like how your business is set up, like legally, but even if it's set up differently, you can still do this in your mind, kind of set this up. But every single month, starting from right when the first month I quit, on the first of the month, I gave myself a paycheck, transferred it into my personal checking account, and I just lived, that was the money I lived off of, similarly to how I got a paycheck when I was in corporate. And so it never changed my personal my personal finances, which I think is so important, because when your personal, what you're paying rent with and what you're paying groceries with, when that's dependent on your business, a lot of entrepreneurs then can get into the state where they're like, I need sales, I need this client. And they have this needy energy where it's like pressury and salesy, whereas I knew I was getting paid no matter what. And so it allowed me to really hold space for that ideal client, and also turn people away who weren't a good fit, right? Only work with those people who I knew we could help, and it would be a transformation for them. And so that was really big. And then being able to, okay, I get this paycheck every single month, but then at the end of the month, let's say the business does really well, I'm either reinvesting that if we have an upcoming investment to invest in, or that can be a bonus. And so instead of saying, well, your paycheck is going to change every single month, having that steady paycheck for yourself can just be such a game changer when it comes to entrepreneurship.
So true. Let's talk finances and relationship for a minute, because many young people go into debt trying to keep friends and press friends or gain friends in that matter. How did your relationships change when you started to change your mind about money? Did you have to let go of some people, or did you have to bring some people up? What was that look like for you?
Totally. So I think that one of the biggest transformations was definitely with my relationship with my fiance, Shay. Because when I first started working my finances, he was definitely like, "You're a weirdo. What are you doing?" And I was like, "That's okay. I'll go on my own journey, whatever." And then as I started really working on my finances and like getting these results, he started being like, "Whoa, what are you doing over there? Like, show me how to do that." And so that was definitely a big thing where I was really working and then he started working, but then it was kind of that mixture of like how, and then when we moved in together, it was like, okay, who's paying for what, and like that dynamic to where, it's interesting because it's, especially when you have a partner, it's two people who grew up with very different money beliefs, very different experiences with money, likely, who are trying to work things out together financially. And so definitely very interesting. And a lot of times the disagreements with money have nothing to do with money. They're about communication. It's about, we didn't talk about this first and then you did that and that's why I'm upset. Not actually about the finances of it. When it comes to friendships, I think a lot of it was just transparency of saying, hey, like we all have those situations where it's like we all got to brunch and maybe you came late and ordered a water and everyone wants to split the check. And you're like, whoa, right? I added a water. And just having those conversations of like, hey, that's awesome. I'm going to go talk to the waiter and just get my own check. But if you guys all want to split it, like, that's totally fine. And just being comfortable with those conversations and understanding that, it's okay to speak up and talk about that. And let's say a friend gives you a hard time or something or whatever. For me, it was understanding that like what they're going to say about my decisions is just they're projecting onto be what their beliefs are. It means nothing about me. It means nothing about me or what I'm doing or my experience. And so a lot of it was, again, just when it came to my relationships, is just building up that confidence to even have those conversations.
Mm-hmm. How was the process looking for a money mentor? Because we, in social media especially, we see so much bling and glamour. How did you define what you wanted in a mentor, and how did you pursue them?
For sure. So I think the biggest thing is finding people who, one, had the business or finances or whatever the goal is, they had that already. Like that was big for me is I didn't want someone who talked the talk. I wanted someone who that was their life, and also whose values really aligns with mine. I didn't want to, like, there were ways early on or even now where I was like, I could scale my business that way, but it's not authentic with what I actually want to do and how I actually want my life to go. And so I'm not going to do that. Even though that one might bring in more revenue, that one might do this, it's not in alignment with what I want and the vision of where I see this company going. And so finding someone who not only has the goal that you want, but has done it in a way that aligns with how you want to do it. Because if you're, I see a lot of people who maybe they coach on business or whatever, but their business model isn't one that I want to have in my business. And so if that's their specialty, I might go with someone else, even if they have the result I want. So it matters to me, not just the end goal, but also the means of getting it and making sure that it's in complete alignment.
Let's talk deeper than money for a moment. Because obviously you work with finances, individual, personal finances. What's the core philosophy? Because deeper than money to me sounds like, okay, we're going to talk about your finances, but we're going to go a little bit deeper than that, or we're going to go more into who you are or your goals. What's the deeper than money philosophy?
For sure. I love getting asked this. So we talked a little bit about this in the beginning, but when I first started paying off finances, I was listening to financial gurus that told me to restrict things and give up and sacrifice. And I was like, okay, I'll do it. And I was focused solely on the logistics. I was like, this is how you pay off debt. This is how you do this. This is how you, pay your bills, whatever. that I didn't focus on the deeper than money reasons for why I was doing this. Like, why did I want to become debt free? What were the beliefs that I had about money? Like growing up, I thought you had to work really hard just to make enough with money. I didn't even think of that it was even in the realm of possibilities that you could have more than enough with money. I literally did not believe that was something that was possible for me. Questioning my money beliefs of, what do I believe to be true about money? What do I believe to be as true for me? Understanding the not only limiting beliefs, but also the trauma and struggles and experiences that I've had with money, and how a lot of times those experiences shape what we think money is going to be like. So, you know, I had this experience that with money where I didn't have enough or something. And so now I'm always fearful that I'll never have enough. I'm fearful that my money will get taken away. I'm fearful that if something happens, I'll lose everything. And so understanding and healing that relationship with money, and, I could go on and on and on, but all of these other reasons have nothing to do with the logistics of here's how to pay off the debt fast. It's all about those deeper than money things that we have to heal simultaneously with the strategy in order to not only get ahead with money, but feel wealthy and feel financial freedom. Because I know a lot of people who are rich and miserable, and they have, they're debt free and they're super unfulfilled, or they're the money, it's not just about the money, it's about making the money matter, doing something where the more that you're getting ahead, the more fulfilled you are, right? Money's an amplifier. And so the more you have of it, it's going to amplify how you're already feeling. If you are unfulfilled, you're going to be more fulfilled, right? Because you find out money doesn't fill that. If you are really joyful and very giving, with more money, you're going to be able to give more. You're going to have more joy and be able to like bless other people's lives and things like that. So that's really what deeper than money means for us, and really just spreading that too, of helping people understand that we shouldn't focus on the money. We should focus on using money as a tool to get us to that state of freedom.
Yeah. So good. Take us to your client experience. I'm curious, what has been your most challenging client experience when it comes to trying to get them to see things through the lens of deeper than money?
For sure. I mean, I have a lot of clients who are very naturally analytical. And so they're like, well, I just need the steps. I don't need that other stuff. And so, it's like, okay, I hear what you're saying. Let's talk through this. And every single time, they'll get to a point in which they're like, why do I feel so much restriction or resistance around hitting this goal? I'll have a client who, okay, I've saved up enough to pay off my credit card debt, but I keep putting off making that payment. I'm like, why? It's all logistical. Just make the payment. Just do it. Just make the payment. She's like, I know, but I'm so stressed. I'm like, cool. Because it's deeper than it's not just about the logistics. We need to understand, why are you so stressed? What is this meaning for you? What meaning are you putting on this money? What fears do you have around this money? And then we'll talk about it. She'll have this aha moment, and it's like, exactly. And this big breakthrough.
Like, I know what I'm doing here. Trust me.
Exactly.
Wow. What simple tips are you advising for people during this COVID crisis? Many are seeing stimulus checks. Some have gotten opportunities for jobs. Others are still waiting. What's been some of your simple money tips for this current climate?
Yeah, for sure. I think the biggest thing is, we talked about this a little bit earlier, but having an emergency fund. There can be so much fear and stress when you don't have a barrier between you and, what if I lost my job? What if this happens? What if I get a pay cut? What if this? Having that emergency fund can really allow you to focus on being proactive instead of worrying about what could potentially, come up for you. The second tip that I would say is making sure that your money is going to places you value. I don't care if that is getting your hair done, or I don't care if that is investing and maxing out your retirement accounts. I don't care what it is, but making sure that you value it, making sure at the end of the month, you look back and you're like, awesome, I'm so proud of where this money went. Like, that's my goal for my clients. This isn't a time to, at the end of the month, be like, where's my money going? Like, we want to be intentional about where our money is going. And the third thing that I would really recommend is just anything you can to add into your week a little bit of education around finances, especially right now, because things are changing so quickly with, student loan forgiveness or stimulus or this or that, but really understanding what's going on and how it impacts you, and then having a plan with it. Yes, like for your stimulus check or whatever it may be, bonus at work or whatever, saying, okay, here's the money coming in and here's my plan for it. Not just letting that money come in and then like slowly disappear through your checking account, but really understanding, here's my plan for it. Here's what I'm going to do, and do that with it.
So good. We're going to prepare to wrap, Chloe. But I've got to ask you, you tackled so much debt at such an early age, and you've built so much fortune at such an early age, and have been able and are continuing to bless people with it. What's been the most exciting part of your financial journey so far?
Oh my gosh. I would have to say the most exciting part and the biggest, like my definition of financial freedom is that I've learned how to build wealth. Because my fiance and I talk about this all the time. To me, financial freedom feels like I know that if everything was taken away from me today, I could rebuild it. Like that to me is so much freedom, because it doesn't depend on anyone or anything. It's just, I know, because I know the tools to build wealth or to start a company or to do whatever. I know I could start a new company or build wealth in so many different ways. And so I think just that, I went from being so scared about money, so worried, so stressed, so like closed-minded of what was possible for me, to this place of realizing that whatever it is that comes my way, I know I'll be able to pivot or work through it. And that whatever happens, because of the education and tools I know of how to build wealth, I'd be okay.
Yeah, that is so necessary, so necessary. We're going to get ready to wrap, but I often play a game called My Five Favorites with my guests. But this one I'm going to play with you is going to be 5 rapid fire questions about finance. So I'm going to ask you a question and you'll answer. What is the most irresponsible purchase you've ever made?
Oh my gosh. Probably one time I bought 2 hamsters without my mom knowing when I was like in high school.
Wow. What is the most rewarding financial move or purchase you've ever made?
I would say investing in retirement, because that was my first taste of seeing my money make money for me, like while I'm sleeping.
Who is your financial hero or shero?
Ooh, that's a great question. Oh my gosh, I don't know who my financial. Oh, this is a tough one. I mean, honestly, this is like such a cheeseball thing, but the first thing that came to mind when you said it were my parents, because they grew up, and I mean, while they just did the best they could, and they used what they had to create anything they could for us, like for their kids. And to me, that level of just sacrifice and that level of like, I love you, and so I'm going to do everything I can to make you have better opportunities, is just like such a heroic thing in my eyes.
What is your financial guilty pleasure?
Oof, easy. Getting my nails done or coffee. Those are like the 2 things that I love spending money on. I just love
it. Wow. And last one, if money wasn't a factor, what is the one thing you would do or purchase?
I think I would purchase like an island or like a big plot of land for dogs, because there's so much euthanization that happens, to where I would just create a big dog rescue where these dogs could just like be free until someone adopted them, but to where we wouldn't have to euthanize dogs.
Wow. So good. So good. Well, Chloe,
I love dogs.
I know. I appreciate you joining me. Tell us how we can connect with you, learn more about Deeper Than Money.
Of course. Well, thank you so much for having me. And Deeper Than Money, we are on pretty much every social media platform. If you search Deeper Than Money, you will find us. We have Deeper Than Money podcast. We have, I hang out on Instagram, Deeper Than Money. We have, TikTok, everything. We have a free Facebook group, Deeper Than Money, where you can ask questions. We go live and answer it. So wherever you hang out on social media, search Deeper Than Money, you'll find us.
Awesome. Well, Chloe, I appreciate you. My best to you, and keep crushing it.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. This was so fun.
No problem. Take care.